Cool, so this is just Strife Haze. They appeal the irony of fresh start or classic servers, MMOPINION. And as always, we go a bit through the comments. Let's see, you mentioned your mention of story power creep just reminds me how much I appreciate how well FF14 knows how to keep the smaller personal stories mattering amidst all the big bads. What the fuck is here? Oh shit, I got a cable in my chair that just popped out. Look at that. Alright, take this out. Take this out real quick. Yeah, anyways, New World's case. The fresh starts were kind of necessary as the legacy servers economy. Yep, this is what it is. This is real. Okay, I don't know what that point is. The main issue with a lot of classic projects is that the devs recreate the game exactly as it was, but make absolutely no changes to it, including keeping the latest version of game balance throughout the entire expansion, which results in a player base that goes through completely degenerate amount of min-maxing to make an... Okay, he's talking literally about classic WoW. It's like not the best example. Classic WoW is like a very bad example for many reasons. My opinion, they appeal the irony of fresh start server. In my opinion, if it's a game that was already out and you remade it, the appeal is that everyone starts at at level 1, but the people with the most information will be ahead of the curve and will dominate the server at first. Obviously, eventually everyone will catch up, but you'll start at a much better point just because you have more information. That is a massive appeal of restarts, okay? The other one is... So, for example, I played Rebirth games like T4C, MU, and stuff like that, and that was interesting because when you reach like max level, you get a rebirth. But now, when you rebirth, you start with like more stats or like more powers, and that makes the gameplay of like you feel so much stronger doing the same things that you used to do in your first life, right? And every time you reset, you get stronger and stronger. So there is an appeal there. You're like beating the content that you found hard on your first playthrough. So it's like you feel that advancement. The other one, if it's a completely brand new game, I would say the exploration of the game is the appeal, right? It really depends on like what the new server is. And changes based on that, right? So it's like if it's a completely new game, exploration, I would say exploration and lore would be the most interesting part. If it's a remake of an old game or like a fresh start of like a server, right, I would say being ahead of everybody else would be the massive appeal. But yeah, let's see what he says.
Fresh start servers, or classic servers of current MMORPGs. Everyone seems to be doing them and people seem to love them, but why? The MMORPG genre is known for long-term progression, constantly expanding storylines, constantly increasing stakes and power. The long-term adventure and consistent character growth was a major selling point of the genre, so why does everyone starts again from the beginning?
There's a massive... I would say the biggest problem of like endlessly progressing stories is that it's endlessly progressing. A few progressions is cool, but there needs to be an endpoint because otherwise you're in an endless progression. That's why people, like for example, for a lot of people, WoW ended with Wrath of the Lich King. That's where their progression stopped. They don't want to progress after that. Wrath of the Lich King was the main story for them. We defeat the Lich King. This is the end of the game. Now let's do it all over again, right? People who play WoW right now, and I was one of them, don't get me wrong, still am if the game was good, but if you play WoW now and you want that endless progression, what you're looking for is not just endless progression of your character, you're also looking for massive changes to your character and evolution of your character, right? Evolution of the spec you're playing, evolution of the thing, like what else can will my character be able to do as the game progresses? So the story becomes less relevant compared to your character progressing. But the problem is, with this endless progression, you also, at some point, you'll get tired of it. You'll be like, I'm done. You know, it's like, for me, the game story ended at Legion. For me, the game story ended at MOP, which is like a very bad place to stop. But, you know, but like there are always like these points in your mind where it's like the game ended here, or like this is a new era, right? So now they're saying like Dragonflight is a new era, so it tries to get you that feeling as if like this is a brand new WoW experience, and that will go on for a few expansions, and then they're gonna cut that off and be like, oh, this is a brand new era, probably to like psychologically make you think that's like, well, this is not endless. There's gonna be an end to this era, and we're gonna go to the next one, something like that.
Appeal to so many people. When most players are asked about the appeal of fresh start or classic servers for current MMORPGs, most people just say, oh, it's nostalgia. And while I'm absolutely sure nostalgia is a major part of it, it can't specifically be the only thing. What about players that weren't there at the start that don't have the nostalgia? And is nostalgia enough to convince enfranchised players to lose tens of thousands of hours of progress, or to give up hundreds of potential hours of content from new expansions? What are the true reasons people go to fresh start or classic servers? Let's discuss. Welcome, I'm Josh.
Well, like I said in the beginning, I think the main reason is to be ahead of the curve because you have the knowledge that you can use now, and you can challenge yourself in different ways compared to before. Before you were like having a problem with like 1v2ing mobs. Now you can like 1v5 because you know how the mobs, how the AI moves. You know how like to build your characters for AoE farming. You can min-max at a much lower level than you could before. Therefore, you can have the advantage over other players who don't have that, right? It's like kind of like, and even if you don't want to beat other players, for you, it's like a challenge for yourself to be better than you were, right? A lot of times when I play a new game, for example, when I played Dark Souls for the first time, my first playthrough, I was just like playing with the stats, whatever, and then it's like I understand the stats. Now I'm gonna make a new game and completely like know what the fuck I'm doing, right? It's like in a lot of games like throughout my life that I used to play, my first character would be like a trash character or like a test character. It's like I play the game, I kind of understand how it goes. Diablo 2 was the same. My first multiple characters were like shit, and then I was like, oh, okay, this is how I should build like for the first few levels. Why? Just to have the first few levels advantage. Even though I could have fixed it within like 3 or 4 levels during my regular gameplay, I felt like I want to be stronger 3 or 4 levels beforehand, you know?
Josh Strife Hayes, and this is MMOPinion. Today we're talking about the appeal of fresh start servers or classic servers of current MMORPGs. As usual, a massive thank you to all the supporters on Twitch and Patreon who allow me to keep making videos. More information on this at the end. Many major MMORPGs have jumped onto the nostalgia bandwagon and opened up classic servers, instances of the game with all the modern additions removed, letting players relive the experience they had all those years ago when they first joined. The most famous is probably World of Warcraft Classic, but a host of other games have followed suit. Aeon tried, Terra tried, Runes of Magic tried, EverQuest has multiple time-locked progression servers released throughout the year, RuneScape released Old School, which itself was updated enough that they've now had a poll discussing Old School, and even New World, one of the more recent MMORPGs to release, has seen success with its fresh start servers.
Well, I mean, with New World, I mean, they fucked up their economy, like the comment said. But the other thing is, the game was not ready on release. If the new fresh servers are like fresh, but with the current patch where like the game is a bit more ready than it was before, then I can understand why they would make new servers and people would be hyped for it.
So I've gone back and played a few fresh start servers or classic servers for current MMORPGs, and I found 8 specific concepts or stages that you go through when you play a fresh start server that really enhance the feeling and make them worth playing. And then I found one major bit of irony related to this entire situation. So let's go back and break them down, starting with, why would an enfranchised player willingly throw away tens of thousands of hours of progress on a single character to go back and start all over again? This is point 1.
Yeah, I mean, the point is their connection to the game, not the character. The other thing is, like, if you feel like your character is complete and the game is not moving forward, the character loses its value pretty much completely, right? At the end of the day. I mean, I just deleted all of my Elden Ring characters because like I felt like they were complete, even though now I'm like, oh shit, man, I kind of want to get a character to like max level with max stats so I can completely change builds as I see fit, right? And whatever I want to play. But at the same time, I'm like, fuck it. You know, it's like I won't do it. I like, just because I feel like I want to, as soon as I log in, I'm like, yeah, fuck, I don't want to do it, right? So at the same time, it's like my progress for the character doesn't mean anything anymore. It was just connection to the world. But yeah,
Many
The way he
players
says
are
it.
connected to the game as a whole more than their specific character. While
Yeah.
MMORPGs are indeed long games and people put tens of thousands of hours into a specific character, you'll often find the connection any individual player has to a game isn't just to their character. It's to everything around their character. The game's graphics.
And the funniest thing is the main reason I quit WoW, obviously, like I just made a video on like why I won't be playing Dragonflight, but the main reason I quit WoW is because I realized that my only connection to WoW was my character, and when I couldn't play my character in the content I want, like mythic raids and all that stuff, because I had to gear up my demon hunter for the raid, I realized that like I don't care about this game anymore, and that's pretty much when like within like 3 days I was like, yeah, fuck it, I'm done, like I quit. Right? So like for me, it was like the only connection I had to WoW was my character, and once I couldn't play that, I didn't care about the game. So in this regards, like if they, let's say, did Shadowlands fresh, I wouldn't care to completely play fresh. I mean, obviously it's Shadowlands, so I would care. It would be a bad game regardless. But I wouldn't care about it, about like having my character deleted, because I don't get to play it anyways. I don't care about that, and I don't care about the world.
Music, or the general community the game has created. The forums, the Discord chats, the guilds, the clans, the conventions, or the content on YouTube and Twitch. This means starting a fresh start server or a classic server isn't actually starting completely from scratch. It's a new character, yes, with new skills, and the leveling experience is still ahead of you, but that's only a small part of the entire game experience. It's still the graphics you know and the music you recognize. It's a control scheme you're familiar with and a user interface you've grown comfortable with. It's the forums you know how to navigate, and the community and content you've already been involved with and consumed before. It's the friends you've already made, going back to the moment when you made them. A fresh start.
Dude, you know what New World looks like to me? It looks like very good graphics that is absolutely not polished. You know those games that are like, take Final Fantasy VIII for example, right? I just saw it on Preach's Twitch. So it's like, they're using actual pictures as the background, your characters run on it. That's what New World feels like to me. Like you have this like really good looking design that moves like a robot instead of something fluid, you know? It's like you have water that looks stale, even though the water in New World doesn't look stale. But I mean, like now that I saw that character, right? It's like the way it like appeared, like this animation, like when he like, there was like, he wasn't like, okay, like this part, for example. After this cinematic, look at it.
And consumed before.
Right? He's not there, and then he appears, right? So it's like this whole thing, it looks very, like, not polished, right? It's not like he's there. If anything, he shouldn't be standing there. He just animated that he's doing all of these things. He should already be, like, walking by the time you see him. Like, he should already, like, be in, like, position where he's, like, boop, moving forward towards you. It just feels unpolished. But again, like it's these small things, right? It looks like you're standing on cool stuff that is not actually there, you know?
It's the friends you've already made, going back to the moment when you made them. A fresh start or classic server isn't a complete restart. It isn't a foray into the once unknown. It is now a very known concept that you're going back and revisiting, and that nostalgia kick is definitely important. It's closer to replaying a favorite game from your childhood or rewatching a favorite film. You know,
buddy, I just rewatched all of Lord of the Rings. Such a good fucking trilogy. I thought it was 3 hours a movie. I was wrong. It's like 3 hours, then 4 hours, and 4 hours. Like that's like, it took me the whole day. I didn't even realize.
To happen, it's the
a good day.
process of experiencing it that is enjoyable. It's comforting. But what about the new players that weren't there at the start? Nostalgia isn't relevant to them, so what are they getting? Well, that leads us to the second point. New players can now experience the memories of the old players for themselves. Whenever I review an
I don't agree with this point. You can't experience the old memories of other players because the environment was different. Like outside of the game, the environment was different, and even in the game. Right now, if you join a game, let's say Classic WoW, and you're a completely brand new player, yes, you'll be a noob. Yes, you'll enjoy the exploring a bit more than people who used to play it. But the guides are there. Like you cannot recreate Classic WoW for new players to feel like the old players felt when Classic WoW was new. That makes sense, right? Classic WoW players were like safekeeping information on bosses. They were not sharing any tips. They were not doing like they were not talking to other players outside of their guild, so their guild would be ahead. They didn't share any strategies on bosses and stuff like that. But then now you have all this information out there. What is your best in slot? What is where you should level? Like fastest way to level, your build, all of that stuff. And it's like, yeah, can you try and like avoid all of this? You can, but at some point you're gonna have a moment of weakness when you're like level 26 and like you're trying to get 11. You're like, fuck man, this take forever, this cannot be the best way to level. And then you'll watch one guide, that's it, you fell down the loophole. You're gonna watch all the fucking guides, everything that has to do, like it's not like one guide to get over this hurdle. You're gonna watch all the guides to get over all the hurdles right away, right? It's like you're gonna watch a guide like 1 to 60 in one day on a paladin, right? It's like, yeah. And at that point you're like, that's it, right? So it's like you're never gonna have that never gonna have that original experience, right? It's gonna be close, but it's never gonna be that, just because of the environment change. And also you're gonna have players like you're gonna just like randomly join a guild, and all these players are just gonna give you tips that you didn't even ask for, right? Just won't mind their own business.
MMORPG, I always try and find something positive to say, but I will also find negative or critical things. And whenever I say negative or critical things, old-time players often respond with, "It wasn't always like this." They jump to defend their favourite game by telling me how great it used to be. And while they're probably being honest, I have to explain to long-time and franchised players, new players cannot play through your memories. They have to play the game as it is now. No matter how great it may have been for you, it's not great now. And as great as your old war stories sound, as fascinating as the guild tales you have are, new players can only listen to and pine for the adventure you had. They can't have it themselves. Fresh Start servers or classic servers, however, do give new players that chance. A classic server does let a new player.
Like I said, it doesn't give them that chance. Like there is a chance, but like the likelihood of it happening are like infinitely small, you know?
Visit the memories of an old player because they're going to be able to play the same game, hear the same music, fight the same enemies, travel the same lands. Old players may indeed enjoy the nostalgia because they've been there before, but new players get to experience the game that old players have told them about in the way they remember it. So with old players enjoying nostalgia and new players getting to experience the game they've heard tales of, we come to point 3. The early game is often a more focused gameplay experience with less feature creep and a less convoluted plot.
The funny thing about this point, a lot of games, Elden Ring included in this by the way, a lot of games it feels like they put so much effort into the early game, and then they got lazy towards the end, like, fuck it, just finish this off, whatever, right? So it's like, like a good example would be Elden Ring, right? It's like up until Mountain of the Giants, you feel like, and honestly, maybe even like Lanedale, like not the city, like the, like right after the lake area, you go up the elevator and stuff, and that whole area feels less, like it has less, like, what do you call it? Like the mansion, like whatever, lava mansion. Fuck, it's called Molten Mansion. I forgot the name. What was the name? Doesn't matter. Anyways, so you know what I mean. Like the mansion area and stuff like that feels less explory, less open compared to like the lake and compared to like the first zone and the second zone, right? Even like the zone, like there's like completely to the south, had a lot of stuff to explore. It had these teleports, stuff like that. So like all of those had like massive explorations, and then it's like after those 3 zones, it felt a lot more direct, right? Actually, Lake of Rot, not like, or like the Rot area, far, whatever, forgot the name again. That one where the Rot Lake is basically in the middle where you fight when you do like the whole golden needle and all that stuff. That area also had exploration, but it's like it feels like after those ones, it's like the effort went down on like making the world very open and became a lot more direct. And as you go with the zones, it's more and more direct. There was no exploration. Farum Azul, or whatever it was called, like the dragon area, completely had no exploration. It was like a very, very like straightforward, like you could have gotten lost in a sense, but it's like you only have like one real direction to go with like one side area is a secret, right? Maybe two. So yeah, so it felt like, it always feels like that, as if like the early areas are just been got a lot more into them, and then like the later the game goes, like the less effort, right? Kind of like take like low level zones in WoW, where it's like you have random quests here and there. You have like this one random quest in the farm, you have this one random quest by the tower and stuff like that. And then you get to something like Hillsbrad Foothill, all the quests are in one zone, as if like, what are we doing here, right? It's like, fuck it, just put all the quests in one zone, you know? It's like they can pick them all up and just go ahead and do stuff, right? And then it's like, and it became that you started getting like quest hubs rather than a random quest somewhere in the world, as if like they lost the motivation to do it. And I'm not saying this is actually what happened, just sometimes like you can look at it and it's like, did they just like give up, you know? Were they like rushed for time? Were they just lazy, you know? Same with like other zones, like, you know, like for example the Barrens was the last zone that they created, right? I believe it was the Barrens, and it's actually barren. Like there's like almost no quests except like the crossroads. There's almost no mobs, like nothing. It's completely barren, which is fine because it's called the Barrens, right? But it's completely barren of content. But compared to like every other zone, like they had stuff. And like same with the other one to the northwest of the Barrens, right?
First releases, especially an MMORPG game, it very rarely releases with everything finished. It won't have every skill it will ever have, or every dungeon or raid, but it will often release with enough to be substantial. And this reduced amount of content can sometimes result in a more defined experience. The game may have fewer classes, but each class will feel focused on a certain gameplay style. There may be fewer mini-games or mechanical distractions, or a simpler UI, and this means that the content that does exist to do feels more important and more substantial. While players may get through it quicker, they will remember it more intensely. Along with less mechanical bloat, you have less plot bloat. The plot and lore of a classic game will often feel much more focused and less convoluted. As an MMORPG grows, the plot gets added to and becomes messy, twisted back and forth. Power creep sets in for the big bad guy of that expansion. Or one of the worst writing mistakes, time travel gets added.
Oh,
the
God.
longer a game exists, the more developers need to add both mechanical and then plot devices to make the player feel challenged or relevant, and this very quickly becomes extremely overwhelming. Eventually, after...
See, I agree with this. I do not like the power creep that happens within like 5-10 levels, right? So it's like a level 30 just feels way stronger than a level 25. Right, a level 60 feels way stronger than level 55, and the worst part is like at the end game right now, for example, Shadowlands, level 60 compared to 59. When you just level, it's whatever, but it's like because you're at the max level, the amount of item levels you can get just infinitely makes you stronger than what you were at 59. Right, it's like 59, even like when you were at 60, it's like 62, 60, like someone who's new at 60, someone who's been 60 for a week. Like massive difference of item levels, right? And like this power creep, I feel like is really bad. I love this is probably the only thing I loved in Molten Core is that you could actually do Ragnaros at level like 55, 56. Whenever you can finish your attunement, you can go in. Obviously, would that be ideal? No, but I love the fact that it was possible, right? That was pretty cool. Obviously, even Classic has the power creep because as new content comes out and stuff like that. I personally don't like it. I love that there's like in TBC, best in slot for like Warrior was like a 46 glove with like fire spell or some shit like that. It is really cool. But that's like never the case really anymore because like you have the power creeps.
Years of feature creep and power creep and parasitic design and systems on top of systems on top of systems on top of bad guys on top of bad guys, it can be comforting to return to a much simpler gameplay loop. Constant power creep is overwhelming, and it's nice to return to a much more basic time. If the player has been tasked with saving the world again and again from a constantly increasing series, a treadmill of godlike beings, each more powerful than the last, eventually you're going to become numb to this treadmill and stop caring about it.
And the funniest thing is that's also my biggest pet peeve with Dragonflight, which is like, now that we are going back to like normal enemies, I think I just don't care about it. It's like these enemies should have come out way before this whole power creep, because now I'm at this loop of power creep where it's like these guys don't make any sense to me anymore. Like right now with Dragonflight, with these like Proto-Dregs, Primalists, it's like, bro, I don't give a shit. I beat a fucking planet like 3 expansions ago, you know? It's like I beat an old god the expansion after, right? I beat like a fucking, what's it called? I beat Death. Like literally like 5 years ago story-wise, I beat Death. So it's like, why do I care that like this guy Primalist is even a thing? It's like fucking spit in its direction and it's dead. That's literally what I feel about the power level right now, because they power creeped it so much, they put themselves in this hole, right? They, in my opinion, lore wise, what they should do is somehow, when we beat, like kind of how they did with Artifacts and Legion, when we beat when like we finished the expansion, we had to use up the artifact powers before BFA. And that also like made us weaker for BFA. That made sense to me. Okay, like, okay, that's cool. This weapon that we used that was overpowered, now like it's scrap metal. Okay, if they could do something like that at the end of Shadowlands, that like we lost our power, a lot of our power was lost in order to defeat the jailer, right? Then I would be like, okay, Dragonflight makes more sense now because we are weaker, so we can play that game. But you can't use this mechanism over and over again, obviously. And it's like they're gonna have a power creep again after this Primalist. The Void Lords are still out there and all this. I don't need to go into WoW. But yeah, like there's always gonna be this problem eventually.
All the power in the universe means nothing when you know the next bad guy will be even more powerful, and every system the game tries to get you really excited for is going to lose its edge when you realize that's what every expansion does every time, and it will just be cast away when the next system comes along. It's nice to return to a simpler time when you know that the high-powered bad guy will remain the high-powered bad guy, and the systems you're investing time in will remain relevant. It's hard to get invested in a dangerous plot or character systems when you know they'll be removed and replaced in a few months' time. But a low-level personal plot with simple but relatable systems, that can be engaging without being overwhelming. Saving a village can often feel better than saving the whole world because you can know and care about the people in the village. It's a personal thing. While saving the whole world, that's an impersonal thing. Along with a simpler plot and simpler, more distilled systems comes point 4. Smaller numbers are easier to track and can feel more substantial when you increase them. One of the downsides of power creep is the easiest way to make a player feel powerful is to simply increase a damage number, or to give...
Like the thing is, it's like when you go from doing 40 damage to 80 damage, it's 100% increase. When you go from 5,000 to 6,000, even though it's a lot more damage compared to 40 to 80, it's only a 20% increase, right? So it's like, even though you're not really calculating in your brain, you still feel like it's like, oh, well, it's only 1,000 more, right? It's like from, let's say, from 100,000 to 110,000, you're like, well, it's 10,000 more, but it's only 10%. Going from 40 to 200, you're like, oh shit, I'm so strong now, right? It's like, it's even though you're not calculating it, you're subconsciously technically doing the math, right?
Give them more health or more power, and this over time leads to absurd numbers showing up on the screen. I remember when Neverwinter had damage numbers in the tens of millions flashing up all over the screen.
Oh, yeah.
And this can become
Good
visually
times.
and numerically overwhelming. But the start of an MMO is often a different story. You'll have low health, low defense, and do less damage, and this means dealing with smaller numbers, and this actually has a massive advantage, because an increase to a small number is easy to track and relate to, and it feels much more substantial than an increase to a large number. For example, getting a new weapon and going from, say, 10 damage to 12 damage is simple yet pleasing. It's a base number increase that
Still
you can
20%
track.
increase.
It's only gone up by 2. But it's also a substantial percentage you can track. You've increased your damage output by 20%. And it's not too overwhelming to see the number 10 go to the number 12. Every single thing about this small increase is relevant and makes sense to you. You can look at every single aspect of it and go, yes, I understand everything that's just happened here, and I can see exactly how much more powerful I have become. But seeing your damage output go from 12
But see, but
million
this is
to-
also the trap, right? Which is like, okay, you add 20%, right? Next, from the 12, you add 20%. Then from that, you add 20%. The 20%, even though the percentage is the same, will eventually increase to the point where like you're doing 1,000 plus 20%. Okay, 1,200, right? Plus 20%, right? It's like, well, 10,000 plus 20%. 12,000, and it's like you're gonna keep going with this, right? Which is like the number eventually. This is the biggest problem. It's like even if it's a percentage based, like a multiply of 1.1, like with every new weapon, right? You're gonna keep getting new weapons. The 1.1 will eventually become a million, right? So it's like you will need to have a nerf, and that's the problem with like endlessly progressive games. If you're just doing like a simple math of like increasing damage, increasing attributes, no matter what is 1.01% increase, right? It's like times 1.01, right? It's like a 1% increase. Even that would become, what's a 1% of a million, right? It's like 10,000. 1 million, 10,000. So you're still getting this massive increase, but you don't care about it anymore. Meanwhile, it's like 10 and 1, you're good, 10, 11, or, stuff like that.
478,397.2 to 12,693,555.4 doesn't have the same impact on our brains, but why? Well, it's because we recognize it as an increase, but we don't know exactly how much it's increased by. We don't know what kind of percent increase it is easily, and because the vast majority of the damage number is the same, starting with 12 million and several 100,000, we don't actually feel the rush of excitement we'd normally get from seeing an increase that we can track.
Nice, right between the legs.
Damage or defense or health or amount of enemies that large for such a long time almost numbs you to its power, dulls the thrill that an upgrade is meant to give. This is why getting your first uncommon or rare item on a low-level character often feels so much better than getting your 2000th legendary, because you can see and understand every element of the small upgrade that you got. And with that personal sense of
and the thing is,
upgrade and achievement...
The thing is, I don't think there's a solution to this. At the end of the day, there's going to be this creep of like, well, once you get your first legendary, it's never going to be as... the second legendary is never going to be as exciting. The third legendary is never going to be as exciting. It's never going to be as exciting. That's why WoW kept changing, for example. WoW kept changing its systems because the system becomes less exciting the more you have of it. So they had to change the system. Right now, when people are saying that it's like, well, now we're in like a system that's going to last through the expansions with the talents, like... You think you like it, unless they build up on the system, you're gonna get bored of it. You're gonna have your builds, whatever. It's like, oh, they're gonna add more trees into the thing. It's like, okay, still, you're not gonna have fun with it as much as you had with the systems. That's why I'm saying the systems were never the problem. The systems, in my opinion, were really fun to play with. The problem was the acquisition. That's why, in my opinion, Legion, BFA, and Shadowlands, as bad as Shadowlands and BFA were, the reason Legion was so successful is because the systems were also, they were new. It was a new concept as well. And it was kind of accessible, especially like 7.1 when they fixed it. It was really accessible. You could get your legendaries like that. And then they introduced the Crucible, which wasn't like fantastic and fun, but again, it added something to work towards, right? It became fun in a sense. Now, what are you going to work towards as far as character development? Once you reach max level, all you have is loot. You have nothing to work towards except from like grinding out loot. So again, there are problems with systems. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like saying like systems are the best, right? But at least they gave you something to work towards. Now you're going to reach max level. It's like, gotta farm loot. That's it. That's all you're going to do. You're going to farm loot at max level. There's nothing else to do.
We get to point 5. Fewer cosmetics means visual recognition of the best. With smaller damage numbers and a simpler plot comes the rather nice community aspect of recognizing things. You can recognize the bad guys and the good guys, and if the first dungeon drops a powerful, unique looking weapon, when you see someone with that weapon, you recognize the achievement of that weapon. You know roughly how much damage it does, where it came from, and this knowledge makes you as a player feel accomplished and part of the world. Even if you don't have the item yourself, the act of recognizing it and understanding it still feels like an achievement. You belong in this world. because you understand this world. Classic
enough.
MMOs didn't focus too heavily on cosmetics or payable cosmetic overrides. Often the item you equipped was the visuals that others...
See, this point I agree and disagree with. The reason, so mogs right now don't mean anything in WoW, because you can go back and get certain mogs from like the mythic and heroic raids that you couldn't do at the time. So now you're stronger, you can go and get them. I feel like they should have limited time mogs. For example, you're doing mythic, like right now mythic plus is going to be 20s, mythic plus 25s rewards a mog set, mythic plus 30 rewards a mount, and this has to be a unique mog set and a unique mount, and it has to be seasonal. So for example, people who got Keymaster during Shadowlands, they got this like cool mount. Okay, 15 would not be where I put this mount if you want people to do higher, because 15 is extremely achievable and you can buy your way to it. I would put it the 20 or the 25. That's what I would do. These teleport rings that they added for the plus 20, who cares, right? It's like, I'm never gonna use this after Shadowlands. You can't show this off. So if anything, Keystone Master should have given you the portals, and the 20s should have given you the mount, right? But I feel like instead of the mount, I would expect a nice fucking tier set. Not a tier set, like a set that is like unique, that is show-offy, something like how you see from Heroic Raid to Mythic Raid. You can tell this set is from Mythic Raiding. I would expect the same from Mythic Plus rewards at higher levels that are like almost unachievable for most players. Okay, same as like how Mythic Raid is unachievable for most players. Mythic Plus difficulties should get to a point where it's not achievable for most players, and like for them to get this tier set or like this appearance, they need to do it. Right? That's what I would hope for, like Mythic Plus. That would motivate people to do the higher keys, because right now doing the max, the max keys, like it's gonna be 20, but so far it's been 15. There's no point after this, right? It's like, well, I'm just doing it for fun. I'm doing it for fun. Like, bro, no one, like, okay, not no one, but like many people don't do it for fun. Many people do it for the vault. There's no point in doing more than that, right? It's like, well, I could do an 18. Who gives a shit? The fuck does it help you do an 18? Who cares if you can do a 24, right? It's like, are you participating in the MDI? Are you trying to get a reward for this? No, I'm just doing it for fun. You're just wasting your fucking time. It's like, what's the point, right?
Would see.
I get
this
it, fun,
leads
yeah,
to
sure,
a
whatever.
community understanding the value and the prestige behind the visuals of each item.
Yes.
In older MMORPGs, often without visual
Similar
overrides,
to
the visual...
similar to challenge modes in in Mists and in WoD. I do not understand. They put so much effort and was fantastic. The challenge modes in Mists and the challenge modes in WoD, they rewarded very unique weapon or armor appearance, depends on the expansion. And they were so cool. And to this day, I'm like, fuck, man, I wish I could get this. But I can't, because you cannot do a challenge mode anymore. Right? But the people who got it, good for them. Right? Same as like you can't get the challenge appearance from Mage Tower for the artifact weapon. I love the Mage Tower appearance for the artifact weapon. You can't get it anymore. Obviously, towards the end of the expansion was a joke to get that, so I got like on many characters I got it, but the point remains, you know. Limited time.
Of a character is a story unto itself. It's a tale of the adventures that character has been on, of the quests they've completed, or the bosses they have felled. It's a status symbol when you're seen with a rare or legendary item. If you have it, you know other people can see you with it. And if you see other people with it, you know what they have achieved.
I agree.
It's a moment to be remembered. And early MMORPGs excelled in this. You see something powerful, and you know the person wielding it did something dangerous. When you play a classic server, you're dealing with a far smaller pool of total possible items. And when you play a fresh start server, no one for the first few months is going to have the top level items. And this means far fewer legendaries or noteworthy items are floating around. So getting one and being seen with one, or seeing and recognizing someone else having one, holds greater social impact. And this links to point 6, because if you do have something rare and noteworthy, you will likely be seen, because a smaller landmass means a denser player base. This one's pretty simple. Map size, less landmass, players are forced into a central city, meaning the community feels alive in-game because it's centralized. As MMORPGs continue to exist, they add expansions, new landmasses, and sometimes they even add what I consider to be a major mistake of MMO design, exclusive high-level hub cities which serve to split the community, often into...
I agree, but also I think the order holes were fantastic. I love the order holes. I don't think the order holes were a mistake. I think that was great. You had Dalaran for the hub, and then you had the order holes for your classes. I think that was fantastic.
Early game hub, mid game hub, and end game hub, fracturing where your player base physically is. Classic or fresh start servers not only have less maps, so the community is densely packed, they often have an influx of players, creating a thriving early game experience. And it's the early game experience for the vast majority of new players where the desire to continue playing is created. Starting a brand new MMORPG and knowing that you're going to be playing solo or alone for several days or weeks before you finally get to the good bit isn't a good experience. It's boring, it's lonely. It's the reason that many new players...
That is a subjective opinion. I love playing brand new MMOs alone. Because I want to take my time, I want to explore and stuff like that. And sometimes if I don't want to explore and take my time, I don't know if the people I'm playing with have the same opinion, right? So sometimes I want to go through the concept. I don't like the zone, I'm just going to, you know, and just go to the next one. Sometimes I love the zone, I want to explore and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know if the people I play with have the same opinion. Maybe they want us to explore zones that I hate. And I was like, oh, fuck, man. You know, this sucks. I love going at my own pace, whatever the pace is. Sometimes the pace is fast, sometimes the pace is slow. You cannot do it with other players. So for my first playthrough, I almost always play an MMO alone. And it's not lonely experience, it's because I am enjoying the game my way, and I cannot expect other people to enjoy it the same way I do.
Players to any MMORPG will quit. Selling your game on the strengths of the social interaction you can have within the game, and then starting with hours, days, or weeks of loneliness before you get to the social interaction bit is not a good way to retain a player base.
So, if I understand him correctly, the game should... right? The game should offer the ability to party and stuff like that earlier. Like dungeons should start earlier in the leveling experience and stuff like that, or like group content. Like for example, Silk Road had this fantastic thing. If you're in a group, there's a chance this group mob of the same stuff you're farming would spawn and stuff like that. That was, and like it rewards more XP and all that stuff. So that was kind of cool. But my point still remains, most of the time I will play solo for a first playthrough. However, the option should be there if you don't want to play solo to play with others, yes.
It helps to have the social aspect visible from the start if you're going to use that as a major selling point of your genre. And that is exactly what fresh start servers allow the game to do, because every player is at the start. The release of a classic or fresh start server is a beacon of activity. It's an assurance that your early game experience will be social because players haven't spread out yet.
Yeah, look at that synchronization.
As grow and expansions are released, the player base is spread further apart, fragmented and divided among new maps, new dungeons, new raids and new areas.
This is not to do with the video. I think the reason I don't like New Worlds so much is because everyone can do the same exact thing with their weapon, and the options are very limited. It's not like you have the weapon has like 8 skills you can choose from, and then you just pick which ones you want to use. Everyone's just using the same ones. Same reason why like I don't care about competing with other players, like parsing and stuff like that so much in what's it called, in Final Fantasy, because frankly everyone can do the same thing, so I just don't care about it. If I could do like something that other players can and beat them, that would be cool, but because I can't, I don't care about it as much. You know, I can't be unique. I can't be like this with this flower, right? So I can't be like this, like, ooh, I'm special, right? A special snowflake. I can't do that in Final Fantasy, therefore I care about it less. I love being able, like in WoW, some guy would go with like the meta build of like high mastery, low haste, and like lowish haste, lowish crit, and high mastery. Meanwhile, I would go like high haste, and I would out DPS him, and I would have more fun as well. Not just because of that, because I'm playing high haste and it feels better, right? I loved that I had that possibility. Not so much anymore.
And even if an expansion adds a new hub city and puts everyone there, it leaves vast tracts of game uninhabited. When an MMORPG is released, the content included often serves a purpose. The enemies fill a specific level gap, the weapons and armor matter. The quests usually connect. There's not as much wasted space, and nothing has yet been phased out or leveled out. There's almost no forgotten content because it literally just released, and someone is going to go and do everything because everything appeals to someone. There are very few forgotten minigames or pointless weapons. No content has yet been feature crept out of relevance. And because a fresh start means everyone starts together, this gives us one of the most important points, point 7. Anticipation is fun, and the group you can anticipate a fresh start with is everyone. The release of something is not just about release day. It's about all of the build up to release day, talking with your friends about it, planning your tactics, discussing builds, looking into the plot and the lore and the characters. It's every minute up to the download and then the login queue. Now, when a long-time MMORPG releases a high-level expansion, the pool of people who can get excited about that event and actually get involved is very small. If a new high-level endgame raid is announced, the only people forming groups and getting excited about it are current high-level endgame players of that game, usually people with years invested. They can't bring their friends in. But when an extremely high-level piece of content is announced for an MMORPG game, the pool of people who can get excited about that content or get involved with that content the moment it releases is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. Thousands, tens of thousands if you are lucky. When a brand new Fresh Start server gets announced, or a classic server gets announced, the amount of people who can get involved, the pool of people to get excited, is in the millions. Everyone who's ever played the game, everyone who ever wanted to play the game, casuals, hardcore, high level, low level, enfranchised, or people who've never been involved with the game at all, can all join on equal footing at the same moment and begin playing the game together.
But it's not equal footing. Hey, what's up, Gojo? What don't you agree with? I don't agree that it's the same level.
A Fresh Start server compared to a high-level update vastly increases the number of people who can get excited to be involved the moment it goes live. This is why companies like the idea of Fresh Start or classic servers so much. They're not releasing new content to people who already play their game, which is a very small, very niche player base. They're releasing old content to potentially everyone who ever wanted to play the game as it used to be, with everyone starting on a new character. And this leads us to point 8. A fresh start means a new race to the top. As we discussed earlier, a classic or fresh start server
main
doesn't
point,
mean
yeah.
you're approaching the game with no knowledge at all. Long-time players will know the meta.
The fresh race, I think that's the most appealing thing for like people who played the game before. The fresh race. Because you want to get ahead. You know you're going to get ahead of the noobs, right? You're loaded with information, you know all the good spots, stuff like that. Right? It's like getting ahead of everyone. Same with like when the new expansion releases, you want to get ahead of everyone because you know everyone's just going to be leveling like crazy. So you just want to get like boom, boom, boom. I want to get like the Dragonflight, for example, like maxed out as soon as possible and level up the fastest, get like world first, level 60, even though it's not an achievement anymore, all these things, right?
They'll know the most efficient method of play. New players will have access to wikis.
And that's like the thing is like when people play PTR, that's exactly, a lot of them are testing that specific way. The best routes, knowing the zones, knowing where to go, checking the quests so you know exactly where to go right away so you don't have to waste time on anything. It's like you know the mini details, you know that it's like sometimes there's like this cave and the entrance is like in a weird spot, it's semi-hidden, and you're like, how the fuck do I get here? And it's like, oh, this is where it is. So you just like already go to the location. All these like small things, they add up, and it's like you're gonna have an advantage. Another reason I don't like PTR, but yeah.
videos and training methods. But with everyone at least starting from level 1 and access to information the same for everyone, we get to watch
Not
the start
exactly.
of a new race for new world firsts.
Not
Some
exactly.
players
Look at Wrath of the Lich King, for example. The guy who got world first almost got world first on 2 characters because he knew of an exploit that no one else knew in ICC, right? And he just farmed those mobs and got like world first way before. I think it took him like what, 3 hours to get like max level. Not even. I don't even know how fast he got, but he was like way ahead of everyone. And his second character was ahead of like still majority of players, right?
chase the prestige of epic achievements, the first
And
to
no
max level,
one
the
knew
first
of this
guild to
except
clear
him.
a dungeon or a raid, the first to max a skill. And when that achievement happens, you'll have a small subset of players who were only playing for that who just stop playing. As an MMO
Nice aim,
ages,
bro.
more and more achievements are added, and you get this double-edged sword effect, where the new world firsts are now incredibly tough and appeal only to the hardcore. And the new players who join the game are overwhelmed by the absolute colossal task of finishing everything in the game. An MMORPG is of course a big game, but there is a sweet spot where the average 2 dedicated player could still look at the content and have a somewhat realistic chance of experiencing it all, or at least attempting to, even if not mastering it. As the game grows, a casual player will look at the mountain of a journey ahead of them and think this isn't even worth starting. This is why so many players are intimidated by Final Fantasy XIV's main storyline quest, or completionists go wide-eyed looking at the trimmed completionist cape on RuneScape, or why many Guild Wars 1 players, especially people starting the game for the first time now, don't even consider going for God walking amongst mere mortals. Achievements are indeed there for the hardcore, and a fresh start server means even the easy achievements are now up for grabs, and everyone thinks on at least some level, that could be me. So now we've got 8 points all discussing the appealing nature of Fresh Start or classic servers. It's a nostalgic return for old players to a world they've known, or a welcome storied start for the new players to a world they've heard about, with a more focused plot and less bloated gameplay, with fewer parasitic or feature-crept systems, with smaller but more substantial numbers linked to visually significant and recognizable items shown to a more densely packed player base, which you can get excited about and anticipate with everyone, and then compete from a level playing field at the same time for realistic, achievable goals. Now that sounds pretty fun, so what's the irony? Well, the MMORPG genre was focused on long-term progression.
Yep.
And now they've discovered the mass appeal of resetting the game and starting again. Effectively, what they've discovered is the appeal of round 1 ending and round 2 beginning, like a match in Fortnite, or a new game in League of Legends, or replaying your favourite childhood game, or a one-shot Dungeons and Dragons adventure, or watching a TV series which starts well but trails off and just going back to the start when it gets bad. The fresh start, or classic server of any MMORPG is often extremely fun, but it's also a sign that the MMORPG designers understand the mass appeal of experiences which end and then start again. It's a sign
I feel like MMORPGs should, for the most part, if they intend to go like so for super long, like many years, they should have like not phases but like eras, basically, which is like, for example, the Final Fantasy 14 era would be up to Endwalker. That would be an era, and then everything after that would be like a completely new start to the story, even though they're doing a pretty good job with continuing it. But like for many players, and especially like recently I've seen people are, why I quit FF14 because it's popular now, and it's like the story for them ended, right? Same as like classic WoW players. The era from like classic to Wrath is one era. In my opinion, like they should somehow, I wouldn't say streamline it so much, but like make a server that just expands to Wrath of the Lich King in a more smooth way, maybe, right? And then Cataclysm to WoD would be another era, and then Legion to Shadowlands is another era. I don't know exactly how you would play it out, but in a lot of people's minds, there's these eras are like this is where I quit WoW. You know, this is where like WoW ended for me.
find that most MMORPGs add content that doesn't necessarily improve the core gameplay loop, but just bloats. Experiences are as long as they need to be and shouldn't add more for the sake of adding more. And I find it intensely ironic that the strength of the MMORPG genre is it's a long-term consistent game which people could play forever, yet it's most appealing to both its current and new players when it restarts. But what do you think? Do Fresh Start or Classic servers return to a more refined time before power creep and feature bloat to give a more pure experience of what each game is?
The other thing is, like, I feel like a lot of players, even though they want the authentic Classic experience, also wanted a new iteration of Classic, or like make Classic, like this is in the WoW example, make Classic what it was meant to be with Mount Hyjal and all that stuff. All the like content that they couldn't do in actual Classic, people wanted that content to be made. Right, aside from like this is the authentic experience, yes, but like when you're gonna restart the server again, people probably wanted more out of Classic, or more out of TBC, or more out of like Wrath, right? All these, like, there's plenty of videos by Bellers like what the missed content of X expansion, right? And I feel like having people like the developers actually go ahead and do that content that was missed, right? Imagine like WoD remastered and actually having all the content that they intended, having what do you call it, Shatrath City, like the raid there, right? Because technically WoD should have had like 2 to 3 more raids compared to like what it had, right? At least like a mini raid. It's like all this missed content that they planned that they never used. I feel like that's what like remaster or like releasing a Classic version would be like fantastic for.
To be with a more densely packed player base, or are they simply cash grabs for nostalgia, preying on people's rose-tinted memories?
That too.
Let me know
100%.
in the comments below. As always, a massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon.
I mean, Classic is a fantastic example of whatever he said, like using people's rose-tinted glasses. Classic release was great. Season of Mastery, bro, like not even 10% of the players of Classic stayed for Season of Mastery, right? And then all the people says like, well, we want vanilla. As soon as TBC Classic came out, everyone went to TBC. Well, where are all these players who cried they want vanilla? They prefer playing on a private server because they get some weird shit that you can't get in Classic WoW because the game is too authentic. It's like it's not as fun, right? You have a Classic server, a Classic private server that actually like went and made Hyjal a zone anyways, right? And like they balanced out some classes and they added stuff like specifically Paladin that was like dog shit completely, right? So it's like these private servers are doing more for the Classic game than Blizzard does because Blizzard just re-released it, right? But yeah, anyways, fantastic video by Josh Strife Hayes. As always, honestly, I love his videos. I love his takes. But yeah, those are my opinions. I'm not going to go any further because this is already a 1-hour react on 20-minute video. So yeah, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next react video. Or maybe one day I will make another video talking about nonsense that I care about. Peace.